IELTS Cast, Episode 28.
You're listening to IELTS Cast, the podcast that puts you in touch with successful IELTS candidates from around the world. Listen and learn as they explain how they achieved Band 7, 8 and even 9. Now, here's your host, Ryan.
Hello and welcome to IELTS Cast. Today I am speaking with a candidate who has chosen to remain anonymous during this interview. Our friend today scored an overall band of 7, and they wrote me an email and said that they had a couple of tips that they'd like to share with other candidates around the world. So I'd like to welcome our friend to the show.
Hello, Ryan. How are you?
I'm very good, thanks. Now let's start by talking about your overall band 7. What were the individual scores that you got that made up that band?
In listening, I scored 8.5. And in reading, I scored, unfortunately, 6.
Okay.
In writing, I scored 6.5. And in speaking, I scored a 7.5.
So now what was the reason behind why you took the IELTS?
I've done my professional diploma here in and that leads me to take admission in masters in any foreign country like UK or Australia. But my intention is to go to Australia and pursue a degree from there. So in order to get an admission in a university in Australia, I must attempt this IELTS exam, which has a minimum requirement of 6.5, and fortunately I'm lucky enough to score even more.
Now your whole relationship with the IELTS has finished, right? Because you've hit the mark you need?
Yes, exactly.
Okay, wonderful. So I guess that means you took the academic.
Yes, academic, exactly.
Right. Now, we're going to go through each of the skills individually, and you can share with us some of the tips. So let's start with this amazing 8.5 you had in listening. What can you tell us about that experience?
I was confident that I was going to score more in listening compared to all those other skills because I was quite more prepared for listening, and that's due to the practices that I used to do while at home, and all those IELTS Cambridge books from book 1 to book 7. I've practiced those books, and I must say that it really benefited me, and it really helped me to hit a huge mark in listening.
So were you hitting 8.5 in your practice exams?
To be honest, in my practice exam, I used to score 9.
Okay, yes, so then the 8.5 was, as you said, it was no surprise at all.
No, there was no surprise at all.
Mm-hmm. So then what sort of strategies can you share with us regarding studying and preparing for the exam?
To all those potential candidates who are listening to me at the moment, I must tell them that, first of all, you should not join any sort of academy at all. Yes, exactly. I must be honest in this regard because these academies they make huge stories, they make huge claims. But I must tell you that if you're clever enough, if you're smart enough, you shouldn't buy their story at all. You should sit at home. You should buy a couple of books. These Cambridge books, they are really good, and they really benefit you. So you should sit at home and you should practice those books, reading modules, listening modules, and speak. And as far as speaking is concerned, I must say that I'm very lucky to score a 7.5 because we live in a city where is the first language, and we don't often speak in English, even though we're in colleges and universities. The friends over here, they conversate in their first language. So I watch TV shows, I watch Star Wars. I'm a huge fan of wrestling, so that in-ring segments between wrestling, that really, I must say that really benefited me in speaking and in listening. Mm-hmm. So yes, you should watch movies for your listening, and you should read newspaper articles, books in order to improve your reading skills, because people here in they score less in reading. I'm telling you this from my experience, and the reason is that there is no reading culture here in at all. That's why people slip, including myself, because I'm not used to this reading stuff at all. I haven't even read one book in my whole life. So that's the reason why they score less. So in order to improve your reading skills, you should read newspaper articles, you should read books, and for writing purpose, you have to practice before you appear for the exam.
Now, I want to get your opinion on something. Now, you were talking about the listening. You had this amazing 8.5, and then you mentioned
Yes.
that you come from a part of the world where people do not regularly communicate in English. And I think that a lot of
Exactly.
a lot of people listening are they can probably completely relate to that. You were talking about the relationship between listening and speaking. Maybe can you elaborate on that at all? I mean, how did the whole using the study strategies that went along with your listening, how did that affect your speaking?
When you let me take an example of watching a movie. Movie with subtitles, not without subtitles. If you're reading those subtitles and you come across a word you haven't heard before, so you open your dictionary and you look at that word, you learn the meaning, and you begin to, the most perfect tip that I can give to all those candidates who want to prepare for the speaking category. So I think that they should talk to themselves.
Okay.
This is something that I myself have followed, and I've even mentioned this before in the earlier part of the conversation, that I belong to a place where English is not a first language, and it's not even spoken quite often. So I used to speak to myself in English for about half an hour. I think 50 minutes a day would suffice.
Okay. And so when you say that you spoke to yourself, were you recording yourself? Were you talking in the mirror, or was it just kind of general, while you're at home alone, you're just talking about general topics?
I'm normally, when I'm at home, I'm in my room alone, and I used to talk to myself generally. I never looked in the mirror and talked to myself. Yes, I used to do, but that was quite rare. So I used to talk to myself, and that used to be general. So there was no such kind of recording. Yes, I used to record it sometimes, but not that much.
Now, just so that we have the whole picture here, so for a person that is the same age as you, and would you say that your English is comparable to theirs, or is it much better?
I can't give credit to myself, because I really feel awkward giving compliments to myself. But I must say that when I talk to people in English, they find it better. They say that comparatively to all those other, my English is much better compared to all those other residents here in my city.
Okay.
So yes, people find it better.
I see. So I guess now the reason I'm asking that is because I imagine that young people in your city study English in primary school, in middle school, high school?
Yes, schools over here, the majority number of schools over here are English medium.
So all subjects are taught in English, or they're taught
Well,
and then you
in urban areas, the subjects are being taught in English, while in the rural areas, the subjects are being taught.
I see.
But that thing has begun to fade away from the society, because English is it's spreading a lot. So in villages even they have begun to introduce subjects in English.
Okay, so I guess then you've had quite a bit of experience with the spoken English language in an academic context, I suppose.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, but then it was all of this extra training that you did that helped you to sort of polish the language further and allowed you to get 7.5.
Ryan, the thing is that I've been to the academy for about a month. It was in late February when I decided to appear for IELTS.
Yep.
So I had a month, spent in taking classes, which I would term it as wasteful, because I didn't benefit from taking classes at all.
Okay, well, let's talk about...
Exactly.
Now, please, expand upon your experience with the Academy and why you've walked away with it with a very negative opinion.
The reason is that when we used to go, they didn't give any sort of tips, they didn't give any sort of techniques. I really benefited from your podcast. I mean, thanks to you, because I've been listening to all those other previous candidates who have scored high, and I've been listening to their tips and to their experiences, and I really benefited from that. As far as the academy is concerned, when we used to sit in the class, they used to put that CD, and we used to practice it, and that I could have done that at home, and I've been doing it. So in the academy, throughout the 30 days, we only practiced reading and listening, and we didn't even get enough time to prepare for speaking and writing.
Well, hopefully that's a unique experience, and that other academies in your city are maybe a little bit better. But I do know the point that you're making, and I agree with you that as far as doing mock exams goes, that is something that a candidate can do very effectively in their home. Because
yes, exactly.
Right. And then also, I mean, I think that a lot of the strategies, the real strategies that students are using and are having success with, are kind of being more and more, exposed on the internet. I mean, not just this podcast, but other podcasts like Ben from IELTS podcast and IELTS Simon is sharing some great tips as well. So I think that a lot of the techniques for scoring well is nothing that you really need to pay for anymore.
Exactly. That's the point. I mean, the people they're listening to you and they've got you. That's my point. That's what I meant to say.
Yeah. So let's then talk a bit about your speaking and listening, and perhaps the experiences that you had in the examination room. Now, you already mentioned that you walked out of the listening exam feeling very confident, and I can understand why. I mean, you're hitting band 9 on your practice exams, so of course you probably walked out of there thinking that you had band 9. Tell us about the speaking exam and the experience in the examination room.
Well, as I told you earlier that I wasn't prepared for my writing and speaking modules at all. So, when I entered into the hotel, the exam actually took place in and this IELTS test is not conducted here in for some undisclosed reasons. Okay. So I stayed there for about 2 days, and the hotel in which this IELTS test took place, I was waiting in the lobby, and my test was supposed to take place at 9:40 a.m. So I was waiting in the lobby, and I had a glass of water, which, if you remember, there was a Bangladeshi student earlier in January who scored 8 bands in speaking. So I followed his tip that he said that a person should have a glass of water before entering the room. So I followed that, and it really worked. So when I entered the room, there was a female examiner. So she was from. She was not a foreigner. She was here from. So when I entered the room, she said good morning. I said good morning. I sat on the chair. So she began to ask a few introductory questions about my name, the name of my city, and then she proceeded to the first part of the speaking, and she asked questions regarding rain. She said that she asked that how often it rains in my city, and is too much rain good for a city, or less rain is better for a city. So and so in part 2, she gave me a card, and she told me that I have 1 minute to make up my points. And she gave me a piece of paper. She gave me those questions, and the questions were explain any historical building in your city, explain the location, and explain its importance. So thankfully, we have a fort, a very quite ancient fort in the city center of. So that began to click. It came in. It dawned on me suddenly. So I began to write on it as much as I possibly could in 1 minute. So and in part, do you want me to proceed to part 3?
Yeah, well, let's just talk about, so now you were writing down a few notes in that 1 minute, and you say that you were writing as much as you could.
Yes.
Was it just sort of shorthand, sort of small points that would help to spark memories or spark ideas as you're speaking? Or how
exactly.
Yeah.
Just a few words. Just a few words, so that I used to look at those words, and I used to make up sentences quite very quickly, because I was running out of time, and this speaking module just takes about 10 to 13 minutes. So you have to look at the word, and you have to make sentences within a split second.
Right. And so I guess then that as you were speaking, you were cueing yourself by looking at the cue card and what was required for the answer.
Exactly.
Okay. So so please tell us about part 3. So
part 3, she began to elaborate part 2. And she began to part 1 and part 2, because part 1 was part 1 had questions related to the climate, and part 2 had questions related to the historical buildings. So that those questions had a touch from climate and a touch from the historical buildings. She began to ask me that I don't quite remember the questions, but one question that really confused me, and it really put a fear in my heart that I began to fear that I might lose bands because of this question. She asked that how climate affects the design of the buildings. So, I stayed silent for a second, and I told her that, Madam, this question is beyond my comprehension, so let's switch to another question.
Okay.
And she quite made an expression that made me fear that this expression, things don't seem good to me, because I might lose bands because of this one question, and I'm quite lucky enough that I scored 7.5. So yes, overall I can say that speaking test really went well, but this one question really haunted me.
So I should have asked this earlier, but this was your first experience with the IELTS, right?
Exactly, the very first.
You felt as though she was disappointed in the fact that you did not attempt to answer the question you asked for the next question. I mean, how would you qualify that couple of seconds of experience? I mean, did she seem very displeased or mildly displeased, or?
Since the beginning, she was very pleased. She was smiling, and she was really responding good.
Yep.
But this one question, it really changed her expressions. She seemed displeased with it.
Okay.
And I think that this to be honest, what I had in my mind when I finished this IELTS test was that when I used to predict my scores. So I used to rate that my speaking would be not more than 6.5. Yeah, exactly. Because I consider myself lucky enough to score 7.5. And yes, I must say that I don't know what you think that my English is strong or what. I don't know. I let others to judge, but I would say that this one question really spoiled up everything.
Well, yeah, the question of nerves comes up, and the question of, often people, they react differently to stress.
But, sorry for interrupting you.
Yeah.
Sorry for interrupting.
No, not at all. Go ahead.
Yes, I had nerves before while I was waiting in the lobby for my turn.
Yeah.
And the moment I opened the door and I entered the room, those nerves, it vanished. Yeah, exactly. I don't know how it happened, but it was a miracle, I would say.
Wow.
I really had nerves because my heart was racing very fast.
Yep.
And I was, how every candidate who used to come out of the room, I used to go to him and I used to ask him that, what was how the whole thing went. So, the moment I entered the room and I sat on the chair, everything was normal.
Okay. Well,
so a person has nerves. You can't avoid it. It's inevitable.
Oh yeah.
So
Definitely.
yeah. So it's inevitable, and you can have a glass of water, and you should trust in yourself.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and that's true. Just as your experience with the listening, if you prepare enough, you really shouldn't be all that surprised with the kind of performance that you're going to give and the mark that you're going to receive. So it sounds as though you were pretty happy with the 7.5.
Yes. In speaking.
Yeah.
Yes, I am. I'm more than happy.
Yeah. Yeah. So then, as far as the reading is concerned, so you've outlined why that was perhaps a little bit weak. Now, what sort of training were you doing for writing? You scored the band 6.5. Did you receive any feedback on your writing before you went to the exam?
Well, to be honest, I wasn't. I was 0% prepared for my writing.
Okay.
I wasn't even prepared at all. So 6.5. I was the way, because the topic which was given to us for in the writing exam was that children are taking sports seriously.
Yeah.
So is this a positive development or is it a negative development? So it's quite an easy topic.
Right.
So the way I attempted the question, I thought that I must score about 7. So 6.5, I'm not pleased with it.
But what sort of structure did you put in place?
Well, first I did I did brainstorming.
Yep.
I did some rough work. I made points related to the positive development and related to negative development. And because I had the strategy that I had in my mind was that I should give not more than 10 minutes to this brainstorming, because you have about 20 minutes for the first part of the writing, which includes that graph and charts, etc. So, and you have 30 or 40 minutes for this second part. And this main discussion part of the writing exam, that counts compared to the first part. So I gave 5 minutes to for brainstorming, and first I mentioned the positive developments, and then I mentioned the negative developments, and I left the conclusion as neutral. Because on the internet I've been reading the experience. I've been reading the experiences of all those candidates, and most of the candidates said that if you leave a conclusion neutral, that would benefit. So I followed it blindly, and I don't know whether that cost me or something else.
Okay. Well, I typically tell people actually to not go neutral if they can avoid it, because I just find that going neutral, firstly, it challenges you grammatically. I mean, the grammar you have to use to be able to structure that sort of position is more difficult, so that's likely going to cause certain issues. It's much easier just to say that I feel A and I disagree with B, sort of thing, instead of
Yes,
saying
exactly. That must work, and I advise all those potential candidates to all those candidates who are about to appear for the exams, that you shouldn't be neutral. You should you should be in favor of any of the sides.
Yeah.
If you're given an argumentative topic.
Yeah, and then just to clarify my position as well, so I'm not saying that being neutral is an error. I'm just saying it's more difficult to go neutral, which, when you're in your exam, I mean, the number one thing you want to do is maximize the chance of a high score. So if you can make the whole process of writing your essay easier, and in my opinion you can, by not going neutral, then that should be a strategy you follow. But okay, well that's some great advice that you've shared there regarding the writing section. So now we're coming to the end of the interview, and I am curious, what sort of advice would you give to someone listening today that is from and is having trouble with their IELTS?
As I said, that English medium, there are countless English medium schools here in students are being taught subjects in English, but the problem over here is that children, when they move out of the classroom, they begin to speak in their first language or in their native language. So, that really affects your journey to learning English. So that shouldn't be done. If you're among your friends, so you should conversate with them in English. If you're in your school, you should converse. Even in some of the institutes, students conversate with the teachers in their native language, which I find really awkward, because there are English medium schools being set up in order to give a platform to the students in order to learn English. So they should conversate. If they have anybody around, they should talk to themselves. They should watch. Unlike myself, there are fond of watching movies. So they should watch English movies with subtitles if they have problem not understanding those dialogues. They should read books, because reading is a major problem here, and most of the candidates that are unable to score high in any of the modules, and that module is reading. Mm-hmm. So they should read newspapers. There is no such kind of culture. There's no environment of reading here. Mm-hmm. So I would say that they should read newspapers. They should read books. And as far as listening goes, so I think that there is a direct relationship between listening and speaking.
I would agree.
So these are a couple of advices I would like to give to all these candidates.
Okay.
I would like to repeat myself again, that please don't join any kind of academy, no matter how big claims they make, no matter whatever they say, no matter what they're offering to you. You should sit at home. You should buy those Cambridge books, book 1, book 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Mm-hmm. You should buy the nine of them. You should sit at home, practice by yourself. You have internet, which is as you said, that it really helps you. It really stops you from paying a huge amount of money. The academy where I've been to, they took about 6,000 rupees from me, which is almost $60, I would say, for 1 month.
Yeah, that is definitely an issue, and I think that you and I can agree that not all institutes are like that across the world, but there is a lot of milking for money in the IELTS international IELTS scene.
That's the point. They make huge claims, they make huge offers, and they make huge stories. But the only thing is that they're doing is to make money. Money is the whole thing.
Right. It is kind of terrible, because they do have people in a difficult position. I mean, people need to pass these exams, and that, I think, unfortunately kind of clouds their vision when it comes to these types of prep institutions. But I mean, like we're saying though, not all institutions are this way, but there are definitely a significant number out there that are doing very little to help the students, or they're doing things, like you've pointed out, that the student can do themselves. So
yes, exactly. In listening, if you're going there joining an academy to improve your listening, so listening, everything's the same. You can do that at home. If you have a laptop, you have a computer, you can put on the series, you can play it, and you can practice it by yourself. You can do that, or you can do the whole thing at home. Mm-hmm. But if you want some advices, if you want to join an academy for tips and techniques, that's a very that's a very weak thought, because you have the internet. You can join, visit websites, you can visit IELTScast.com. You should listen to the interviews, listening to the experiences of various candidates. You can really benefit from it. I myself have benefited from these podcasts and from IELTS forums. And I think you may be right that there may be a number of institutes that really that may be good, but I won't let this cloud my judgment. But I would say that you shouldn't join an academy. You should sit at home and you should prepare by yourself.
Very interesting perspective. Thanks very much for sharing the advice and the insight into the examination.
My pleasure, Ryan. My pleasure. Thanks for giving me an opportunity to share my experience with you, and thanks again.
Thank you for downloading from IELTS.com. Have you achieved an overall band of 7 or higher on the IELTS exam? Why not contribute to the podcast? Contact Ryan at his blog, IELTS.com.